WBAN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. And it is Wednesday, August 22nd. And if I sound a little scattered, I'm going to explain why that is. We're dealing with a lot of stuff here on the island and whatnot. Anyway, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And normally, I'm a little better organized for the show. I'll do about 3 hours of prep work before the actual broadcast, so I've got my talking points and everything laid out. And today what happened is Claire and I like to do our regular shopping in the mornings when nobody's there. We'll go down to this big box store, and we're right there when it opens at 7 o'clock in the morning. And we go in, we get our stuff, we get out, we come home, and everything's fine. I had absolutely not considered the fact that everybody on this island is in a state of panic buying because of the impending hurricane. And the place that was just packed, the lines were reaching halfway to the back of the building. I mean, it was just really very intense. So I put together a show, but it's not, I apologize for any incoherencies that are in there. Anyway, our third hour guest today is Layla from Ontario. We've gotten a lot of email about her, mostly good, some critical. But it was a listener suggestion that we interview her like a guest and let her talk about her origins, where she grew up, her encyclopedic knowledge of Middle Eastern politics and history, her career in the corporate media, which apparently she walked away from. So getting on back to our hurricane, it's still out there. It was briefly at a Category 5. It's back down to a Category 4. And it's basically the center of the storm. It doesn't look like it's going to hit any of the islands directly. Keep our fingers crossed. But it's going to be a near miss. And the Big Island is already feeling the effects of it with very heavy rain. And like these poor people haven't suffered enough down there. So over the next 2 days, the center of the storm is basically just going to follow this curve right up the archipelago. And Friday, right about showtime, is when it will be closest to us here on Oahu. How close, we're still not sure. There are 6 different models in use, and they're giving 6 different predictions for where the hurricane will be on Friday. But Claire and I are basically hunkered down. We've made our preparations. We did see some people who were boarding up large windows. So that was kind of a reminder. And the radio stations are, of course, keeping track on this thing. They're treating it as much more serious than Hurricane Harvey, which before it got here, pretty much everybody knew was going to give us a wide miss. Not in this case. This is a near miss, and the storm could still unexpectedly dodge and make landfall. And Cat 5, that is serious storm. That's like Hurricane Iniki that just devastated the island of Kauai. And there are places on Kauai that to this day have not been rebuilt. One of them, of course, being the Coco Palms Resort, which was this very beautiful Hawaiian-themed resort. It sort of set the inspiration, if you will, for faux Hawaiian architecture on the mainland. Portions of Elvis Presley's Blue Hawaii were shot on the grounds, which made it globally famous overnight. Elvis got married there. I married my first wife there, and went through a tropical storm on that, which may have been the Hawaiian gods giving me a warning. But apparently the Governor Ige held a press conference early today, and he basically said that the emergency responders wouldn't be able to deal with a direct hit, that the effects would be catastrophic. And he's right. But again, according to the latest predictions, the center of the storm, the eye of the hurricane, will not make landfall. So there's going to be a lot of wind, a lot of rain, and again, not good for our tourism. But the storm is very, very powerful. It was so powerful, it actually grounded the Hurricane Hunter aircraft, which is supposedly built to fly into these storms so they can take measurements. And one of the reasons for the uncertainty over where the storm is going is because they're not getting that data from inside the storm itself. They're relying on computer models and just watching the thing from space. So that's where we are with the hurricane, and we're concerned. You know, we're obviously concerned, but it will be what it will be. All right, let's get into the news here. Over in Afghanistan, it looks like the ceasefire with the Taliban has failed, and apparently they launched, or somebody launched, a missile attack at the Afghan president and cabinet members in the heart of Kabul's government and diplomatic district yesterday morning. Now, President Ashraf Ghani was out there making a speech to mark the Eid holiday, and a volley of 20 missiles came crashing on in, which you can hear in the background of the speech. So it was an apparent assassination attempt, and Ghani said if they are thinking that the rocket attack will keep Afghans down, they are wrong, which raises the possibility it was a PR stunt. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Over in Syria, militant groups are constantly violating the ceasefire regime in the Idlib de-escalation zone. This is coming from the Russian Center for Reconciliation. And according to the statement, the ceasefire was violated in at least 17 villages and settlements in western Aleppo, northern Latakia, and northern Hama. And the center also said that Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is sabotaging any peaceful dialogue between the opposition and the government, as well as making preparations for its own offensive on government positions in southern Idlib. Idlib is going to be the final battle. That's where it's all going to be settled. Now, meanwhile, the United States, Great Britain, and France are vowing to punish Syria for renewed chemical attacks on civilians, meaning more cruise missiles, more attacks on the Syrian forces, more attacks on Syrian infrastructure. And they're back to that same old tired horse again. Assad is gassing his own people. And I find it insulting that they seem to think we've forgotten about the last few times they tried this, and it turned out to be a hoax. There was no chemical attack. Especially that last one. The white helmets basically just staged that in front of a video camera. Sent it on out and said, oh, Donald Trump will launch cruise missiles into Syria and blow up the suspected chemical lab. What they got was a pharmacy. Now, Russia is saying that Moscow is not holding any talks with Washington on Iran's presence or potential exit from Syria. They're saying they're not discussing it because, frankly, it is the United States that is not supposed to be there. And this was in response to recent claims by U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton, who's claiming that the U.S., Israel, and Russia have common interests in minimizing Iran's influence in Syria. And Putin and Trump have reached agreements in this respect. So basically, Russian presidential spokesman Dmitry Peskov has called John Bolton a liar. There are no agreements. There haven't even been talks here. So, meanwhile, NATO is launching the largest war games in decades. They're going to stage it in Latvia. And they're the largest war games to ever take place in Latvia since the country became independent, all the way back at the end of World War I. And the military games, which have been in preparation for 4 years, are scheduled to include military and police addressing, quote, spontaneous, end quote, unrest in Russian populated towns. So this is more saber rattling at Russia. And Russia is rattling the sabers right on back, because next month they're having their international military exercise, Vostok 2018, which they're describing will be held on an unprecedented scale. And it's going to be happening next month. It's going to be the largest military exercise since Zapad 81. And a number of countries are taking part in it, including China. Meanwhile, back here at home, surveys are showing the absolute majority of the American people want diplomacy with Russia, not war. So all this propaganda to demonize Russia and demonize Putin and trick us all into hating him and be willing to throw our babies onto their bayonets, it isn't working. They're not getting the traction. Trump is on the right side of public opinion when he talks with Moscow, and on the wrong side when he ratchets up tensions, which he's doing. There's no question about it. Over in Ukraine, according to a report coming from the Donetsk People's Republic, Poroshenko is readying to attack the Donbass to impose martial law in Kiev, where his own people are getting unhappy at the economy and the wars. And he's also planning to cancel the Ukraine elections. So apparently intelligence of the DPR is saying there will be a major provocation by the military and political leadership of Ukraine to kick this all off. So Poroshenko's going to get to keep his job for a little while longer. Down in Gaza, people are very angry over the fact that Trump is just cutting aid to Gaza, which is just in this strangulation blockade by Israel. And now, unfortunately, the United Nations UN Agency for Palestine Refugees lost a lot of its funding, which was coming from the U.S., and now they're having to lay people off. So even that one agency that was allowed to be in Palestine and trying to do some good, they're being shut down. Now, one thing that may be going on, the reason why Israel continues to stand there, well, actually they're hiding in little shelters and just shoot Gazans at random at those fences, is that they're dealing with what they're calling a demographic threat. Right now, Israel has 7 million Palestinians, and that population is expected to double in the next 3 to 4 decades. And a lot of observers of the Palestinian-Israel conflict realize that this kind of growth within the mandatory Palestine areas, Israel proper, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip, constitutes a strategic challenge facing the Jewish state and the Zionist movement as a whole. And they've been talking about this problem for a while. But the issue is Israel has now officially declared itself an apartheid state with its nation-state law. But when the population of Palestinians grows larger than the population of, well, everybody else, and they still have no representation and they're still being kept captive in these little walled-off areas, everybody in the world is going to say, yeah, Israel's an apartheid state. There's no denying it now. So Israel sees a growing Palestinian population as a threat, and one wonders what they're planning on doing about it. Okay. Apparently, the United Nations Nuclear Watchdog Agency, the IAEA, says it has grave concern that North Korea has not halted their nuclear program. Now, the IAEA does not actually have access to the North Korean facilities. They're basically doing this all looking through satellites, and they're saying they're not seeing anything that would indicate that work has halted. In other words, they're not demolishing any buildings. Well, we need to counter that. North Korea has shut down their nuclear test site, and seismographs have not picked up the tremor resulting from a detonation from anywhere. So at this point, this sounds like more North Korea bashing. The issue would be to prove that North Korea is, in fact, continuing to develop the nuclear weapons. But you need to understand that North Korea may be waiting for a token of gesture, some kind of a gesture from the United States government. Because North Korea's done a few things. They returned those remains. They did shut down the nuclear test site. They've opened the border with South Korea to allow people separated by the Korean War to get together again. There's continuing talk of more cooperation between the two Koreas. And now South Korea's defense ministry is considering removing the description of North Korea's military as an enemy state in the 2018 Defense White Paper to be published later this year, which is another sign that relations between North and South Korea are improving. Remember, they're talking about reconnecting all those roads and railways through the DMZ. Get some commerce going. I think they're going to reunify. And at that point, North Korea won't need nuclear weapons. South Korea will be able to say, thank you for all the soldiers and everything, but U.S. go home. Because the U.S. has been using the threat of North Korea to justify its presence in South Korea. The South Koreans are not happy about that one bit. All right, so let's turn to the domestic politics because there is a lot going on. And the Democrats are just happy as all get out over the convictions and plea deals coming from Manafort and Cohen. And calmer voices are saying it's really not a big deal. Mueller is still looking for Russian collusion. The real danger, though, is Cohen may be willing to lie. And he's clearly flipped on his former client. And Donald Trump is openly saying Michael Cohen is just making up stories to get a deal, to get out of jail. Now, Trump tweeted that he feels very badly for Paul Manafort and his wonderful family. The Department of Justice took a 12-year-old tax case, among other things, and applied tremendous pressure on him to turn, and unlike Michael Cohen, he refused to break to make up stories in order to get a deal. So if I were Trump, I'd be getting out that pardon pen right now. Now, Michael Cohen is already out there saying he would never accept a pardon from Trump. By golly, you know, the lines are drawn. It's confrontational now. So Cohen is already out there saying that he's willing to tell Mueller about Trump's conspiracy to collude with Russia. And by the way, I think Cohen's behavior here, where they've completely abandoned attorney-client privilege, is why you should be careful trusting a lawyer. Because if you think about the education they get in law school, they're taught to win at all costs. They're never taught to think about what's right, what's wrong, whether somebody's really innocent or guilty. It's just win your case, win your case, win your case any way that you can. Remember that story about Robert Mueller when he was up there in New York? He actually wrongfully imprisoned some men to protect Whitey Bulger. So Cohen is out there saying he's willing to tell Mueller about Trump's conspiracy to collude with Russia. And apparently, again, even on MSNBC, said that attorney-client privilege in this case is strictly optional. Okay, now Cohen is now out there on the media, and the Democrats are celebrating, saying that he paid the hush money to this porn star, Stormy Daniels, and this former playmate at Trump's direction. And already he may be in trouble because according to a story that was over at 12160.info, in the actual Cohen indictment, the court document, it records that Cohen had proposed this deal and put it together, but that Trump canceled it, called it off at the last minute, said don't make the payments. So Cohen's credibility is already shot. All right, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back after these few words.
corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge 20, 30, 40, 50, if possible, 100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, we're talking about Michael Cohen's plea deal, for which he's apparently decided to betray his former friend and client, and basically make stuff up. And it'll be a case of he said. But a lot of people are already out there saying, very obviously, Michael Cohen has a motive to lie, and he's already been caught in one lie, which was undermined by the government's own documents in the case here. Now, Mark Levin is saying there really isn't a there, because these payments, they're not an in-kind campaign contribution. I mean, hush money, paying somebody to stay silent is as old as politics. But they're trying to act like it's a big deal, like, oh, look what he did this time. So basically, Mark Levin is out there, who was being interviewed on Sean Hannity, saying the Cohen payments were not campaign contributions and did not violate campaign finance law. Now, former Obama CIA Director John Brenner is still out there whining and crying about his security clearance, and now he's threatening to go to court to sue Donald Trump to get his security clearance back. John Brennan was on Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, and he was just out there playing the martyred victim. Woe is me, feel sorry for me. Former head of the CIA? I don't think so, not when you look at what the CIA has been doing. But even Brennan's former associates, they're starting to distance themselves from him because he's attracting too much attention. He's making them all look bad. Now, over at Judicial Watch, Tom Fitton is asking a very good question. What is happening at the Department of Justice? And Judicial Watch just uncovered more classified Hillary Clinton emails that were being kept on her non-secured server. And Fitton is saying the Department of Justice is out to lunch on Hillary Clinton's national security crimes. Anyone else would have been arrested and prosecuted by now. Well, Hillary Clinton is an untouchable. She knows where all the dead bodies are buried in Washington, D.C., and more importantly, how they got to be dead bodies. The entire government is afraid of her. And they know that if the true scale of this scandal came on out, it would probably bring down the entire government. And they want to keep their jobs. They love living high on the hog. They love getting paid 1/3 to 1/2 more for the same job in the private sector. They like the perks. They like the status. They like the ego feed. But again, I think what's really behind this was there was an espionage operation being run right in Washington, D.C. Part of it was Imran Awan, the IT expert, who has been let off the hook by the judge. Just let him walk. And of course, Hillary's private email server. And based on the history of Chinagate, it's reasonable to ask if Hillary Clinton, while Secretary of State, was selling America's secrets to foreign interests using her private email server with very weak security to deliver the goods, and the Clinton Foundation to collect and launder the money. Because a lot of foreign donations came in to that Clinton Foundation. And by the way, I understand even Alex Jones is starting to ask this same question about, was the email server a conduit, a drop? It's a reasonable question to ask. Anyway, good news for Christopher Steele. He managed to get the libel lawsuit against him by the Russians that were named in his dossier thrown out. So the judge in D.C., Anthony Epstein, upheld the motion to have the oligarch's case thrown out. Now, Epstein did not determine whether the dossier itself was accurate or not accurate. He simply dismissed the libel claim. A little bit of a fix in there, as it were. Now, a lot of people are still scratching their head over Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and her surprise come from behind victory in the primaries. But apparently, according to the Daily Caller, Ocasio-Cortez is tied to George Soros, and his media network helped ensure that she was going to win the primary election. Now, according to the Daily Caller, in an attempt to put 400 Bernie Sanders-like politicians in Congress, Soros has propped up the political career of now infamous communist Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who, by the way, is also in favor of wide open borders. So once again, everybody's talking about Russian meddling or Israeli meddling or British meddling. How about Soros? He's meddling. He's playing God with our political system in our country. We have to take another break for commercials, and we will be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Join Mike on the air. Call toll-free 800-313-9443. 800-313-9443.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, it turns out President Obama has been found to have broken Federal Election Commission finance laws, and his 2008 campaign was fined $375,000 for campaign reporting violations. This is one of the largest fees ever levied against a presidential campaign. And apparently they found something like 1,300 violations. The final report has yet to be made public, but again, they're all cheaters. They're liars. What can I tell you? Here's another example. Representative Duncan Hunter and his wife were indicted yesterday on federal charges that they used more than $250,000 in campaign funds for personal expenses that ranged from groceries to golf trips, Hawaii vacations, apparently an airline ticket for their pet rabbit, and then they lied about it in federal findings, claiming the expenses were campaign related. Now, Representative Duncan is saying this is all politically motivated. All right, so let's talk to the economy here. This is the longest bull market since, I love this one, the Great Pyramid Boom of 2580 BC. And the length of the bull market, I think, is supportive of the theory that it's all been rigged. Now, we know all the way back when Bill Clinton was president, they started this special team, the President's Advisors on the Markets, more commonly known as the Plunge Protection Team. And their job was very simple. They had access to large amounts of money, and when the market started to look like it was going to correct, they go on in, pump it back up, crush the shorts, which I would think is a form of fraud. And then Bill Clinton would go on saying, it's the economy, it's doing really good. But as of right now, this bull market may be making the 10%ers happy, the people with investment income in the stock market, but it can't last forever. And there are signs that there are serious strains in this stock market. For one thing, it is greatly, greatly overvalued. And it's getting harder and harder to see what's going on, because in this era of deregulation and obfuscation, more and more institutions are just not putting out information. Remember, I think it was like 15 years ago, they stopped putting out what was called the M3 aggregate, which was an absolute number of how much US cash was in circulation. And it was a direct measure of inflation. That one doesn't get reported anymore. We just get platitudes and assurances from the corporate media and the government that inflation is under control and unemployment is only 4%. And we know that one's a lie. You can verify that for yourself going over to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and looking at the labor participation rate. And Paul Craig Roberts made an excellent point on this very issue about a week ago, where he said, if unemployment were this low, you would see wages and salaries going up to attract workers in what was basically a seller's market. We're not seeing that. So something is definitely out of kilter here. A lot of people are very concerned about Trump's foreign policies, and analysts over at Veterans Today are saying that Trump has succeeded in pushing nearly $200 billion in oil cash to Russia by scrapping the Iran nuclear deal and blocking Iranian oil exports. Now, Russia, China, Iran, and Turkey are working to develop a new oil trading currency that will completely bypass the dollar, the end of the petrodollar deal. And this, of course, will be a hammer blow to the American economy. Now, Germany wants Europe to form a counterweight to the US. And Germany is saying that the EU needs its own payment system, isolated from the US. And it's being sold on the idea that this could save the nuclear deal. And what they're talking about is they want to go on having the nuclear deal with Iran, but they're afraid of US sanctions. But if they stop trading with the US dollar, if they set up their own payment system and become self-sufficient, trade with other countries that want to do business with them. By not going through SWIFT, by not going through the dollar, the sanctions are toothless. That's where the world is going. The entire global economy is adjusting and adapting. And everybody sees it happening. Over in China, their state media is mocking Trump for helping to make China great again. And apparently the trade war is not working out the way Trump wanted it to. And they're saying basically it was shock therapy about how far apart China and the US are. So, little humility, I think, on both parties' part would be a good thing here. Meanwhile, here in the United States, business leaders are crying foul over the tariffs, and we're talking about small to medium-sized business owners who are engaged in importing things. And so representatives from a broad cross-section of the U.S. business and industrial group are voicing their concerns on the first day of 6 days of public hearings on the impact of a fresh round of tariffs on Chinese products. And they're saying these hefty duties are harming U.S. consumers, workers, and businesses, as well as the economy. And the reason this is going on is because all the way back when Trump started talking about all this, I pointed out we don't have domestic production to replace the goods we have to import from China. It's going to take years to get that ramped up. And I think a program of incentives would have been a better idea. Incentives to Americans, government support for building factories and businesses, more support for our business people. Unfortunately, all of the nation's money is still being spent on all these wars all over the world. And we, the people, are paying the costs of it, paying the costs of the tariffs. Because those tariffs come right onto that price tag. We're already seeing it out here in Hawaii. Stuff that's made in China, all of a sudden it's a lot more expensive. But there's nothing else on the shelf. There's nothing there that says made in America. It hasn't come online yet. All right, turning on back to Russia again. Apparently, it is the intention of the U.S. government to gradually tighten its unilateral sanctions against Russia until Russia changes its foreign policy. This is from Wes Mitchell, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for European and Eurasian Affairs on Tuesday. What they're basically talking about is Russia, they want Russia out of Syria. And they want Russia to take Iran with them when they go. But again, it is the United States that doesn't have a right to be there. So Trump is weaponizing sanctions, and he's basically trying to torture the people of Russia into the point where they turn to their government and say, look, whatever the Americans want, give it to them. I don't think it's going to happen. The Russians are very, very tough people. They're very independent-minded. So they want Russia out of Syria. They want Russia out of Ukraine. Not that Russia's actually in Ukraine. They're still talking about forcing Russia to give back Crimea to Ukraine, even though they never took it in the first place. This kind of provocation, this kind of outright economic war, could very easily devolve into a real hot shooting war. Adding fuel to the fire is apparently Washington has now frozen hundreds of millions of Russian dollar assets in the USA. This is coming from Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, Sigel Mandelker. And apparently Washington included 2 Russian citizens and 1 company on the list of cyber sanctions. So yeah, it's just going to add fuel to the fire. Now, I know a lot of people are demonizing Putin, but I hope he stays where he is for as long as possible, because I'm concerned what his potential replacement might be like. Okay, now, turning to the economic news. Well, this is the economic news. Apparently, Greece is headed back into another economic crisis because in the long run, nothing was solved. Greece gets a bailout, they turn around, they send that money up to the European Central Bank to try and settle their debt. They're not investing in their infrastructure. Nothing fundamental was changed. And so it's basically a kick-the-can story. There'll be another bailout, which is another loan, and everybody sinks deeper into debt. Down in Venezuela, things are really, really bad. The country basically came to a standstill yesterday trying to deal with its newly introduced currency, the sovereign bolivar currency. And apparently thousands of businesses closed in order to adapt to the new currency. Many workers stayed at home, and President Maduro has declared Monday, this coming, to be a bank holiday. So desperate times are calling for desperate measures, and they're establishing a new currency, and hopefully that will restart their economy. But again, Venezuela has been the target of U.S. economic war for decades. A new report is out there saying that every year, 1 million Americans about default on their student loans. And that means by 2023, approximately 40% of the student loan borrowers are expected to default. This is a new report by the Urban Institute. This is a nonprofit research organization dedicated to developing evidence-based insights on critical issues. And researchers found about 250,000 student loan borrowers see their debts go into default every quarter, and an additional 20 to 30,000 borrowers default on their rehabilitated student loans. They're just keeping them on the hook. They're willing to refi, but it means the interest payments go up. That's all. College has stopped being about education. It's about indoctrination, and it's like everything else in this country, it's deteriorated down to a racket. They go on out to high schools and they encourage students to go to college, saying, you're going to find all these wonderful jobs. Sorry, there's no financial aid for you, but we can get you a loan. And these kids graduate with a degree in art history or some such silliness, and they can't find a job. And they can't make the payments on the student loans, or only just barely, especially when they're working at a fast food restaurant for a minimum wage. That's why so many millennials are still living with their parents going into their 30s. It's really not a solution here. Okay, there's a story running around on Bitcoin.com, and it's about an individual who legally sold large amounts of cryptocurrency at a profit, and then basically put that money into his Clydesdale Bank account, at which point Clydesdale Bank decided to freeze all assets involving people who'd been involved in cryptocurrencies. Now, the guy they did this to had no criminal record, never broken any laws on financial regulations. Everything was perfectly okay. But the bank manager said the bank no longer wanted to do business with, quote, that kind of people who were involved in cryptocurrencies. It almost feels like the crackdown on the independent media. We don't want you to have your own currency. If you want currency, you come borrow it from us at interest. That's just the way the world is supposed to work. There's another video out here, apparently over in Spain. The 300 migrants stormed the Spanish border town of Ceuta, attacking police with acid, feces, and quicklime, just trying to break on through and get into Europe. And apparently 7 police officers suffered acid and lime burns as more than 100 of the sub-Saharan migrants succeeded in jumping the border fence that separates Morocco from Spain's North African exclave of Ceuta. So other press reports said that actually closer to 200 were successful. It is a mess, mess, mess. Now then, as you know, they found Molly Tibbetts. Unfortunately, she had been killed, and they've arrested an illegal immigrant and charged him with the murder. And there, the story kind of goes away, because obviously people who want closed borders or secure borders are making an issue of this. It's another example of how the open borders policy increases the threat to us. And Tucker Carlson was interviewing one of these open borders supporters on his program, and said about Molly Tibbetts, why can't America secure its borders? And the guest came back by saying, well, white people kill people too. Okay, so it's okay for us to let in, people south of the border who are going to kill us because we're killing ourselves anyway. That was the response. That's how they're trying to get away with it. Over on MSNBC, it got even worse, where Christina Greer, when somebody talked about Molly Tibbetts, she said, oh, that's just some girl in Iowa that Fox News is talking about. They want that story to go away because it does illustrate the problem with the open borders. These are not all nice people who are coming on in. In fact, most of them are people Mexico doesn't want. We're going to take another break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. It really does work like the review says it does. I cannot believe that after the first few days, I didn't feel as sluggish or clogged up. It has had a profound impact on my physical, emotional well-being. I'm skeptical as most people about products and their claims, and I never write reviews, but this is a wonderful product and I recommend it to everyone. Great product. It has brought my blood pressure from the mid-150s over the 80s to the mid-130s over mid-80s, along with diet and exercise in just the past couple of months. Excellent. Thank you, David. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay. Unemployment.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. And we're going to take a phone call from Dave in Missouri. Aloha, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, howdy, Mike. Hope you're having a blessed day, brother.
Thank you.
I'll tell you what's on my mind. There's several things. it seems like treason inside the Trump White House. And yeah, it's partly his fault because he kept too many of the holdovers. He surrounded himself by too many of the wrong people. But Cohen, been his lawyer for 20 years, my understanding? Imagine the money that he has gladly accepted from Trump and now to just flip like this and, I'm not even going to accept a pardon, act like Trump it has some sort of disease or something. Man, he sure didn't think so when he was cashing those checks, did he? My God, you just got to hate. Yeah, you just got to hate. Go ahead.
Well, like I said earlier in the show, it's a good lesson in why you should never really trust a lawyer. And you need to remember, this guy's been recording his clients secretly all during his career, which you're not supposed to do. I think under the law, it's not technically a wiretapping violation, but it's certainly got to be making a lot of Michael Cohen's other clients very nervous right now that, first of all, he recorded them in private conversations. Now he's proved he's making these conversations public for Trump. And so other people might be thinking, what might Michael Cohen be arm-twisted into doing by Robert Mueller, now that he's completely compromised and under Mueller's control? Mueller's on a fishing expedition. He wants to go everywhere with this.
That should have been shut down so long ago. I blame Trump for letting that happen, too. Why do you just continue to let the poodles snipe at your heels, And it just kills me how, it really is wagging the dog to see all of the pressure against Russia. What's he trying to do? Satisfy the Democrats? It's never going to happen. Why persecute Russia when there has never been one shred of evidence that they even attempted to affect the election, much less had any effect on it? And so, it's just, I never understood Trump's attitude toward Russia, and it just seems to be getting worse. He's never going to appease the Democrats with this. Doesn't matter what he does. So I don't understand what his long game is with just continuing to harp on Russia. Do you get it at all?
Well, he's basically, the entire government is pounding on Russia as a distraction from our government's failings, which are legion. But I think the idea is that Trump is hoping that he can score a victory against Russia and Putin to look good for, first of all, the midterm elections in November, and then later for 2020. But he is running a tremendous risk here, and the rest of the world is really seeing the United States in a very, very different light than they did perhaps half a century ago.
I hear the music.
All right.
I do have another point if I could hold on.
Stay on the line. Going to put you on hold. We'll be right back after station identification.
My name is Don Wiskin, and at 42 years old, I suffered a massive heart attack, lost 35% of my heart to damaged tissue, and was supposed to spend the rest of my life on disability. What did I do? I took Extendivite, a garlic and cayenne mix of 7 herbs which rebuilt my heart and gave me back my life. For over 17 years now, I have made this formula available to you so you don't have to suffer the same thing I did. Clean your blocked arteries and strengthen your heart and boost your natural immune system. I'm 60 years old now and I still work every day. To get your Extendivite, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com. Extendivite is only $69.95 for a 2-month supply of either capsules or liquid.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2, and we're talking with Dave in Missouri. And Dave, you said you had one more thing you wanted to share with us.
Well, I do want to follow up on the Russia thing because there's a lot of us out here who are so sick of this, and we all vote, and to see Trump kind of fall for this and bash Russia when they have done nothing wrong, that's going to affect us too when we go in the voting booth, because we don't like to see our president, who we elected to be a nationalist and a leader, follow along with really what the Democrats have set up as a distraction from all their criminal activities. So that's going to affect some of us in our thinking. But to an earlier story, the alligator tears of the U.S. importers because of these Chinese tariffs. Of course, they've had it so good for so long. Sure, they're going to bitch and complain and cry. But if we don't do something to enable American industry to come back, if we don't find some way to have Made in America in American stores again so American consumers can purchase them, we have no hope of passing on any viable economy to our children. We're going to watch it collapse because we produce nothing. So sure, the people who have made the money off this, who really, in my mind, are criminals themselves, at least economically, so far as the best interests of the country are concerned, yeah, they're going to cry, and who cares? But that's just my take on it. I'm a little hardcore in that regard. And I want to give my love to Claire. I want to ask folks to please support RBN. You got to see the assault that the truth is under. And if we don't have outlets like this, maybe Alex Jones is a little crazy, but they're making him more famous than Elvis. So the more they beat on it, really the more it's going to come back at them. But it's up to all of us to share the truth, to share links, to share what really happened.com, share RBN website, and please support it financially. Mike, you're a godsend. I love you. Peace out, brother.
All right. Well, thank you very much here. And getting on back to your issue with imports and tariffs and everything, basically Trump jumped the gun. He just went on out. He got some bad advice that said, we'll impose the tariffs and that will make fair trade between the U.S. and, for example, China. But they missed a key point, which was domestic suppliers. And yes, some steel mills have reopened, but a lot of those steel plants are going to take serious, time-consuming work to be brought back online. And that work should have been happening before they went into the sanctions war. Instead of spending all this money all over the world bombing places into rubble, they could have taken that same money, and there's a lot of it. We're talking huge, trillions and trillions of dollars, and taken those same young people and put them to work making factories that make things, become a manufacturing powerhouse the way China has. We used to be a manufacturing powerhouse. We came out of World War II in great shape. We were the only nation who didn't have its industrial base bombed into rubble. And between that and Bretton Woods, that's why the 50s were such a golden age for ordinary American people. All right, we're going to switch over to another phone call. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, Mike, I'm a Debbie Downer, and those jobs ain't coming back because you know what? Everybody wants $15 an hour here. It's $15 a day in China, and it's $15 a week in Vietnam. So those companies that say leave China, they'll go to Vietnam. You know what I mean? Like, there's a big world out there now. It's not the same world that was from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's a big world, and Russia just offered China land to grow soybeans and stuff. You know what I mean? So we're isolating ourselves.
Yes.
And the world's moving on.
Yep.
And that's a fact.
Yep.
You know, and there's nothing really we can do about. Mike, you look at Detroit and stuff. Those buildings are still rotting there. Nobody has come in and knocked them down and dragged the stuff out and rebuilt anything. Trump hasn't rebuilt anything, and he's been in how many days already?
Well, he's been there a little over a year and a half.
Yeah, and nothing. No wall. No infrastructure, Mike. Where's the infrastructure? I mean, yeah, he's got issues because of these people that want him out, but, Trump's his own oligarchy. But the longer this drags on, it's just dragging out this country. And with Cohen and all these other people, do you notice they all have, like Omarosa, have one thing in common? They're all backstabbers.
Yes.
This is all these people are. Washington, D.C., the elite.
Yep.
They all will stab each other in the back to get ahead, Mike,
Yep.
at our expense.
Yep.
And I just don't see any fixing of this anymore. We know what's going on by now. I don't think it can be fixed.
I don't think it can't be fixed. That's why I keep saying my prediction, if you will, for the future of the U.S. federal government is a Soviet Union-style collapse. And then we, the American people, are going to have to basically grab our country, kick all of these professional politicians, out of our capital city, and start it all over again. And I think the Constitution and the first 13 amendments are a good place to start. We could settle the issue of whether we still need an electoral college or not and go back and forth on that. I really do think that with today's current technology, we could have a direct participatory democracy, by which I mean that the federal government could make decisions that are low-key, like where the highways are going to go, how we're fixing the bridges and everything. But major policy decisions like whether to go to war could be put to a vote of the entire American population. The technology is definitely there to do that. And like Thomas Jefferson, I want the new country, the new government coming into this country to be deliberately weakened and, held back, restrained, so they can't run off and just do, what they've been doing here for the last 50 years. And that's one way to do it. Tell the federal government, you don't get to declare war. Congress doesn't get to declare war. We, the American people, will vote whether we're going to go to war or not. So that's.
But Mike, look, you just mentioned. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
You mentioned Duncan Hunter. You had Anthony Weiner and the Awan brothers, and it's just on and on. You know what I mean? It's all rotted.
Yes.
Every single one.
Yep.
So if they go after Manafort. Manafort's been there he was a lobbyist for he's been in Washington forever, right?
Yep.
They knew about the dude. But they only went after him because he was with Trump. But otherwise, if he was with Clinton, you wouldn't have heard about it.
That's absolutely true.
They're all doing it, Mike.
Oh, remember when the Department of Justice was carrying out the so-called investigation of Hillary's email server? They were handing out immunity deals left and right like they were M&Ms.
Mike, the Walking Dead TV show is based on the United States because we are a walking corpse of rot. And like rot protects rot, Mike. And like I said, I don't see anything being fixed. We're looking like Detroit. That's it.
Yeah.
Flint, Detroit, Baltimore, it goes on and on, Hey, Mike, can I switch gears? I got time real quick? Or?
Well, I have a comment to make here, and that is that we are an empire in decline. And unfortunately, it looks like the U.S. government solution is to try and declare war on everybody to try and reestablish its greatness. And it is a war that ultimately, I think, the U.S. is going to lose, even if it goes to nuclear weapons. So what's the gear that you want to switch?
I wanted to talk about the Russian, there's like CNBC article, which, take them with a grain of salt because they just want you to buy more stocks while they're selling stocks behind your back. They had that article about the Russians' failed missile test of the nuclear-powered missile. I don't know if you read about that, but they said from an anonymous source, 4 of them failed, and it's all BS because, Mike, if the missile crashed into the ground. I mean, I would fly it if it was tested. It would be flown into the water instead of flying it into the ground on land, right? So if the test was successful, you'd fly it into the water because I'd rather have it fly into the water with a small nuclear source than flying it into the ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you could argue back and forth over which would have the greatest environmental impact. But again, right now we're hearing all kinds of talk about new wonder weapons coming out from both Russia and the United States. And it's basically a way of, trying to uptalk each other and say, we've got this and we've got that, we've got that. Again, it's right out of the Cold War. And we know that the actual quality of what's coming out of the United States really isn't that good. And the U.S. military-industrial complex has a horrible habit of over-designing systems, making them hideously complex in order to simply make them more profitable. And it makes them difficult to fly and difficult to maintain. And we're already hearing complaints about the F-35 that it is so difficult to maintain and keep all those little parts working that it's going to be a hangar queen. It'll be spending much more time in the hangar being worked on than it will be out there actually fighting combat. And Russia and China, on the other hand, they basically learned a very important lesson from World War II, which was better to have lots and lots of inexpensive weapons rather than a few very expensive weapons. Now, Russia and China have put out some amazing aircraft, but I'm willing to bet that they don't cost anywhere near what the F-35 does.
The problem is, Mike, Russia, I think, learns a lesson now. No matter who's the president, the United States is untrustworthy, along with the British and the French. They've shown their cards already.
Yep.
Right? So I don't care. I mean, Trump can make friends who he wants, but we know who's running the show, per se. So they need, like I said, move east. That's it. Move east. Eurasia. That's the future.
Yep.
Look away from the dying West because we are dying. All right. Thanks, Mike. Have a good show.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and we're going to do a much delayed shout out to our on-air affiliates who have rejoined our network now. Getting on back to the news. Do you remember this guy who claimed to be the leader of the KKK? And he fired a pistol during last summer's white nationalist rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. Well, he's going to jail. He just got sentenced to 8 years in prison. And this is Richard Preston. He's 53 years old. And he identified himself to the media as the Imperial Wizard of the KKK. And Preston said he was acting in self-defense, but the court apparently disagreed, and he's going away for a long time. All right, now, over in, again, California, at Lodi High School, there was a girl who was kicked out of her history class for wearing an NRA t-shirt. And another girl, also wearing an NRA t-shirt, were then lectured by the teacher who told them guns are bad. It's like that guy on South Park. Guns are bad. Guns are really bad. You don't want to be around guns. So basically, the girls refused to change the shirts. And this thing escalated, and it involved John Whitehead, who's a civil liberties attorney, saying this is a matter of free speech. The shirts are not offensive. It just says NRA. And the officials at this Lodi High School have now backed off and admitted they were wrong to reprimand these students for wearing NRA t-shirts. And again, I'm concerned about how education has really become indoctrination in this country. You know, guns are bad. The Second Amendment only applies to people working for the government, things like that, stuff that came out of Common Core, along with all of our other indicators of a dying empire. We're not educating our children to have a decent future. They're being brainwashed, for lack of a better word, to make them politically useful, to make sure they're going to vote for this particular party or this particular candidate. Because we know that along with the colleges, even the high schools and elementary schools are showing a clear liberal bias. And that's not what education should be about, especially when you get into these areas where the schools are standing in loco parentis, which is a Latin phrase meaning we're going to be the parent of this child. They're making medical decisions for them. Boy, oh boy, are we in trouble. Oh, to be able to go back and live in the world as I knew it back in the 50s. Anyway, over at Antifa, they've just got some bad news. A new Rasmussen poll has found that only 18% of Americans support Antifa, which is a drop over last year. So it looks like they've had their 15 minutes of fame, and they hopefully will start fading away, and along with all the violence. Now, Cardinal Roger Mahony, he's the retired Archbishop of Los Angeles, and he was scheduled to be the keynote speaker at next month's annual fundraising dinner for Utah's Catholic Diocese. And he is now withdrawn because apparently there were going to be protests staged around this place in Utah over his alleged role in covering up priest sex abuse in Southern California in the 1980s. And of course, there's that report that came out of Pennsylvania. 300 priests in 6 Pennsylvania dioceses had abused at least 1,000 victims over a period of 70 years. Now, I imagine that this sort of thing's been going on for a very, very long time, but people were so enslaved by their belief in the church that they would pretend it wasn't happening, or they'd ignore it, or they'd say, that's impossible. I can't believe Father O'Flaccid would do something like that. And because of the tight connection between religion and politics, there was a lot of political pressure on investigators to not do anything. There's a movie out called Spotlight, and it's about a column that was called Spotlight in a big city newspaper that decided they were going to report this story. And they came under all kinds of pressure from all different levels of government. No, don't do this. Please don't. You will not report that. Find something else. And they went ahead and published, and sort of marked the beginning where people started saying, I think we have that problem here as well. And it clearly is a major, major problem. And it's impossible to look at this kind of behavior and reconcile that with the claim that these priests represent the supreme moral authority here on earth. I mean, it's certainly hypocritical. And apparently underneath those white robes, there lurk some very black hearts. Okay, Jack Dorsey has come on out saying that CNN is behind the suspension of Alex Jones. So I think just a lot of people got together in the corporate media and politics and various other corporations like vaccine makers and said, it's time to shut it all down. This free speech nonsense has to stop. Now, Alex Jones has apparently, according to this story in 12160.info, basically offered $1 million to anyone who can prove he actually encouraged violence against the media, because that's the latest smear job they're doing on him, to make him look bad. They're trying to make him look bad so people won't sympathize with what's being done to him. They'll say, that guy, he deserves to get kicked off of Facebook. It's not working, by the way. As that earlier caller said, they're just making Alex Jones more popular. Anyway, we're going to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Many people tell us about their experience with Extendivite. Just listen to what Glenn has to say.
Prior to taking it, I had diabetic neuropathy. The Extendivite reduced that significantly. Acid reflux was reduced. I had athlete's foot, very severe. Trimmed that down to about 75% dandruff, almost completely gone. I had occipital neuralgia at the base of my skull. I was having migraines, reduced by about 90%. Heart palpitations, my heart would kind of stall out. I would skip a beat, very uncomfortable. And when walking from downstairs going to sleep, by the time I got to the bedroom, which is just one flight of stairs, my heart was pounding, coming out of my chest. My vision was blurry. This completely solved that problem. Great product. Thanks.
Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just scratch yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far $5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And I'm just looking at the latest update about this hurricane, which is out there. And according to this article today, it's back up to a Category 5 storm. So just keep an eye on it. Right now, the big question we have to deal with is tomorrow night is when Claire's choir rehearses, and whether or not we should call that off for the sake of safety. Alrighty, getting on back here to the news. Facebook has deleted hundreds of what they describe as Iranian state-backed accounts that were pumping out pro-Corbyn tweets. And again, it's just outright censorship to protect the powerful. Apparently these accounts were also saying bad things about Her Highnessness the Queen. All right, we're going to take a phone call. Carrie in Philadelphia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. First off, thank you for your efforts. And I just want to give a suggestion about alternate internet and the technology that's available today to provide such means. If your listeners want to look up something called LoRaWAN, it's LoRaWAN, I've been online since before the internet was available to the public, and we used to exchange information at like 2,400 baud.
Hey,
and
I
it doesn't
remember the
have to be
days of
fast.
300 baud. You know, I had this.
Yeah, there you go.
You know, I had this terminal in my home, and I would dial into the computers at Robert Abel and Associates with an acoustically coupled modem. You put the phone handset in these two rubber tubs. We used to play games. We'd jingle
Right
our
on.
keys over that thing and try and guess what was going to show up on the screen of the terminal.
So, LoRaWAN is a technology that rides on kind of public RF frequencias, and it goes very long range, but it's low data rate, and that is how we could build an alternate. So I just wanted to put that out there. And also just put out the premise that the front lines of this battle is the networks and how people communicate with one another, and that's basically it, Mike.
Well, I'm looking at the specification here right now, and it seems really engineered for communicating with Internet of Things. It's sort of a mid-range between your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth is what it looks like to me. But you're right. I mean, obviously, we need to start thinking about how we're going to get the message out. Are we going to use email lists? Are we going to use shortwave? Are we going to use fax machines? But one way or the other, we'll keep getting the news out there because the American people have to be fully informed. And right now, all this banning and everything that's going on is making these social media companies look very, very bad. And it's already costing them users, which is why Facebook apparently got burned, artificially inflating the numbers to keep their ad rates up.
Yeah, I mean, currently right now we could form VPN networks with one another, but that's still dependent on the pipes coming into our home.
Yeah,
and we need to understand people only have a choice at best, maybe 2 internet service providers that supply that pipe, but most people only have one, if any. So I really just want to put that idea out there too, because you have the captive audience, and I'm sure you've got some people that could have the time to tinker around with this stuff and let it mature and grow.
Maybe, or it would take a little bit of an investment, but we could start encouraging the use of what's called packet radio, which is a special form of ham radio that sends data packets, and you would need to get a ham license, which these days you don't have to learn Morse code, unlike when I was a kid, and you can just get a packet radio. I don't know what they go for, but I imagine $300-400, and you set it up, and like the internet, it forwards packets it receives onto the next link, and you can literally get packets.
Right, and there's a lot of inexpensive equipment that you can actually build your own ham equipment out of what's known as software-defined radio.
Yes.
SDR. There's many things, but just a little bit of starter for people for food for thought. Look all that stuff up on search engines. Another great site is hackaday.com, where it's a site for electronic enthusiasts, where you can find many ideas about these various things.
Yeah.
So,
well,
anyway,
we'll see what happens. I'm seeing the deplatforming of the independent media, well-known independent media, has slowed down. And I think the social media corporations weren't expecting the pushback on freedom of speech that they got. Anyway, Carrie, got to let you go here. Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll-free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. I was doing another check-in on Hurricane Lane, and according to the latest prediction, the storm is slowing, and it will be closest to where I am sitting early Saturday morning. They were saying it was going to be Friday. Now they're saying it's going to be Saturday morning. So again, it's going to be a near miss, but I saw a news report where people were just out panic buying water, ramen, noodles, lots of toilet paper, just in case they get flooded or without power for a prolonged period of time, which is entirely possible. I remember we had this big earthquake down in the Big Island, and it rattled our island pretty darn good, and the power went out. Now, we got our power back in just a couple of hours, but some portions of the island, it took a week. Okay, take a phone call. Nathan from Northern California. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. Thanks very much for taking my call. I just wanted to mention a couple of quick things, if I can. You mentioned that you've been disappointed in Trump because he turned over the, voter integrity committee. He dismantled it and turned it over to the Department of Homeland Security.
Correct.
Well, I was watching a show. Yeah, I was watching a show on the internet a couple days ago, and this guy Mark Eggers, I guess he's got a book out called Fraud. I'm not going to read it, but it looks pretty informative. He basically says that people don't know this, but the Voter Integrity Committee was sued 19 times within a year, and many of these organizations that sued the committee were Soros-backed organizations. And if I'm not mistaken, 12 states, to put it bluntly, they gave Trump the middle finger and said, we're not going to cooperate, take a hike. And what do you do when you're in that kind of a situation? Well, we'll just go to court and solve this problem in 2 years or whatever. So, I feel sorry for Trump in that respect. They did have Kevin Shipp on the show, and he was asked, I believe it was yesterday, is Trump going to try to do anything about election fraud? And Shipp said, yes, he is, but the big problem is there's so many states and so many districts, so much of it going on. Beating the clock to election day is going to be a real challenge.
Yep.
So he thought he's going to have to be very selective about who he goes after, etc. But I just thought I'd throw that out, and I also wanted to thank Steve Elkins. I called in about about 10 days ago, and I was talking about Cody Snodgrass, and Steve Elkins called in a little bit after I did, and he kind of said, well, I think Cody's a fraud, et cetera, et cetera. And then he said he wanted to talk about autism. And I'd like to back Steve up for a second. He mentioned he was a grandfather of 5 kids, and I'm a grandfather with 3 grandchildren.
Good for you.
And on the subject of, I like to think of myself as a young grandfather for the time being, but time will catch up with me like everybody else.
Yes.
But the youngest is 4 years old on the 26th, and what happened with my daughter, she's out in Albuquerque, and in order to get subsidized daycare, they insisted that he get a shot. And I had told her prior to this, and I didn't even know that, this was going on, don't give him any shots. Well, she gave him a shot, she got him the shot, and he ended up in the hospital with 104-degree temperature, and he's never been the same since. It looks like he's got hyperactive autism. He's just going 100 miles an hour all day long. Extremely difficult to take care of, and he's such a nice little boy. But autism is a devastating problem, and I'm just one of those people on the fringes of it that's dealing with it. And all I can say is, from what I hear from my daughter, she takes him to the doctor, and the doctor says, well, we're going to have to see how he does in school. Well, he's already in daycare. His grandmother's watching him on the weekend. You know what it's like. You can see him. They don't seem to want to diagnose him with autism. So what I did yesterday, I sent out a $400 check to one of the top 3 neurologists in Albuquerque, and I said, this is for Brennan's birthday. Call my daughter, make an appointment, and let's get to the bottom of it. She's a holistic neurologist, so she's on both sides of the fence. So wish the little boy luck. I'm really pulling for him, and I hope my daughter gets out of denial. But what Steve was talking about, you've talked about autism, anytime that you can bring awareness to people about this problem, it's very real, and it is devastating, absolutely devastating. And one last thing, and I'll get off on Cody Snodgrass. I don't need to watch reruns of SpongeBob or My Favorite Martian or Get Smart to have a laugh. I just have to listen to a Cody Snodgrass interview, and some of the stuff he says is crazy. He did say that when he was meeting with his boss about, being offered $1 million to blow up the federal building in Oklahoma City, he told Doug Hagman that he had 2 hand grenades on him and 3 pistols. And I'm just like, do you always go meet with your boss to discuss business with 2 hand grenades and 3 pistols on you? It's like, give me a break.
It does seem a little bit of overkill. Well, of course, it depends on what business your boss is in.
Yeah, well, he turned the job down for bombing the Oklahoma City Federal Building, and he was offered another job where he was supposed to help kill 25 Mexicans up in Wyoming. They had some Beechcraft airplanes that were running drugs. He called it a GI drug op, and they're supposed to kill all the low-life Mexicans who had fake green cards, who were driving these drugs to places like Salt Lake City, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And he compared this thing that they were doing to Mena, Arkansas. If you know anything about Mena, Mena, Arkansas was a disaster. They had 9 or 10 federal and state investigations going. People like Barry Seal at the top was murdered. It was an absolute calamity. So why kill 25 Mexicans on a little dinky drug op? Just fly them down to Mexico and say, thanks very much for your services. I hope you enjoy your $10,000, $12,000, and adios.
Well,
so the stuff he says is just...
I want to get back to Mena here, because Mena, in terms of its geopolitical objectives, which was to stir things up in Nicaragua, it was a successful operation. Right. Where it went wrong was they didn't roll it up soon enough, and it got blown. And that's when all the investigators came on in, and the CIA couldn't get them to back off, and they basically offered up Barry Seal as a sacrificial lamb. Again, these 2 Washington Post reporters, I'm blanking on the names right now, they actually acquired a batch of Barry Seal's files, documents, and they wrote up a story about how the White House was involved with this gun and drug running operation. And they took it into Washington Post manager Bob Kaiser after the story had passed legal check. The Washington Post lawyers said, this is all fact checked, there's no legal exposure here, it's okay to publish. Managing editor Bob Kaiser spiked the story. And Bob Kaiser is an alumni of Skull and Bones, where he knows George Bush from. So these 2 writers finally published the story in Penthouse magazine. And,
I remember.
Yeah, it just blew the whistle. Anyway, listen, Nathan, I got to let you go. We got a bunch of callers piling up on the line, and we're coming up on the top of the hour. And Layla, those of you who've been reading my website for a long time probably remember a gentleman by the name of Les Visible. And he has his own blog, Reflections in the Petri Dish. He's a very creative person. And I've just received word that he's in the hospital. He's undergone some unspecified surgery, and everybody is wishing him well, that he will recover from whatever this is. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones here. Dan in New York, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi. I wondered, is Karen there?
Is who there?
Karen, is she there? I thought you were going to have something on South Africa.
Well, I don't have any guests right now. I'm going to have Layla in about another 15 minutes.
Is that about South Africa?
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry to bother you.
All right, not a problem. Okay, let's see. Let's go to Scott in Texas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Hey, I was just going to respond to that guy that was just talking about Cody Snodgrass, because I'm the guy that had Snafu Radio, and I got shut down a long time ago by YouTube. I've been talking to this guy for a long time, since November, and have copies of his book about he was offered $1 million to blow up the OKC building, got framed for something else, spent 2.5 years in federal max prison, and then got out, wrote all the book, and compiled all the evidence, and then waited till about 20 years for most of the people to die off so he could actually come out with it without getting killed himself, because he thought he was going to die in prison because he was a contractor for the CIA. And as far as some story about going up to in Wyoming or wherever and killing a bunch of Mexicans, I have never, ever heard anything remotely ever uttered from the man, and I speak to him on the phone weekly. So I don't know who this fella is, but I know I speak to him all the time. You can go to real.video and just Google Snafu Radio and Cody Snodgrass and listen to our interviews right now. So, boy, it was just ironic. I happened to tune in and just sit down and turn you on, because it's kind of hard to find you on the internet, you know, so because everything's jumping around, everybody's getting deleted right and left. And so that was just really ironic I caught that. So I want to set the record straight.
Well, there are a lot of people who think that Cody is rather self-aggrandizing, to put it politely. And my question would be, if he really was offered $1 million to blow up the Oklahoma City building and turned it down, why is he still alive? You know, something that's that dark, that deep, that sensitive, you don't get to turn those job offers down. And of course, we know a lot of people were involved in that bombing.
Well, there was a lot of things going on back then. That was right after Waco, you know, and then all the depleted uranium bullets and all the information was housed in Arkansas. They just happened to move it to OKC, all the evidence on DU bullets from the Gulf War syndrome.
Yeah, and all the Waco paperwork was also in Oklahoma City. Anyway, listen, Scott, need to let you go. We're coming up on the top of the hour here. And to clarify what Dan in New York wanted, it turns out Karen Smith is doing John Stedmiller's show after my show, a little over an hour, and she is from South Africa. So that's where that little bit of confusion came from. Okay, let's see what's going on here. If you're on Windows 10, you're about to get new Intel patches for Spectre and for Shadow bugs. And I don't know if they're really bugs or not. They could be hardware backdoors that have just been discovered. And it's a problem. It really is a problem. Okay, now, there is this article over at Blacklisted News, and it's talking about plastic trash. And they're not talking about the shopping bags or food wrappers or anything. They're talking about very, very tiny bits of plastic. Scientists call them microplastics. And they're basically smaller than 5 millimeters, and they're everywhere. They're in the environment, and researchers started taking this serious about 15 years ago. They're in the oceans, rivers, and lakes, and they can harm wildlife, including food stock life, and even get into you by consuming those animals. So I remember it wasn't all that long ago when they were talking about being able to make biodegradable plastics, where if you did throw it off by the side of the road, it would basically, in the sunlight, it would dissolve in a week or so. And I don't know what happened to that. It may have been that it was too expensive to make. It may have been that the food companies wanted to be able to store food longer or transport it longer, and there was a concern that the wrappers could start disappearing before it even got to the store. All right, We're going to take another phone call. Mark in North Carolina. Aloha. We're probably going to have to take you through the commercial break. What's on your mind?
Yeah, Mike, I just heard you on actually today. I just got home, and I heard this guy talking. I figured right away he's probably talking about Cody Snodgrass. I've heard a lot of interviews by Cody, including Hagman, John B. Wells. First time I heard him was in John B. Wells, and a couple other shows. Oh, yeah, Jason Goodman. And I believe this guy. I think he sounds to me legit. I can't say for sure. I don't know the man personally. He also was almost killed in a car accident, kind of coincidentally, right after we started talking. So,
okay.
I don't know.
All right. Well, thank you for that update. We're going to let you go, take a commercial break, and we'll be back after these few words.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read a few from Amazon.com. Dr. Sam Serino reviewed the Extendivite product. Good ingredients, feeling much better since taking product. It seems that the tablets work well. Once again, thank you for your product. My acid reflux is really improved thanks to the Extendivite. Together with my thumb joints, the pain is gone and I'm able to grip things much better. My friend has peripheral arterial disorder and their lower legs were hurting in a red color, but thankfully, there has been a significant improvement. Kind regards, Janice. My husband feels a big difference using Extendivite. Thank you. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about Angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking Angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. And still keeping an eye out for Hurricane Lane. And they're already talking about, closing the airports and schools. Although it looks like, according to the latest track prediction, that the storm will actually be closest to Oahu on Saturday morning rather than Friday, as they were originally saying. So hopefully we're going to have our radio show on Friday. Now, the other day I was talking about this article that came on out saying about all this earthquake activity around the Ring of Fire, including this magnitude 8 that happened out toward Fiji. And apparently earlier today, there was a 6.3 magnitude quake that struck 188 miles off the shore of the Oregon coast. Now, that's in the Cascadia subduction zone, which is actually under more pressure than even the San Andreas. So a lot of people are getting very, very nervous because there have been all of these quakes all around the Ring of Fire. Now, the USGS is out there saying it's just a coincidence that they're all happening right now. There's nothing major about to happen. But then that's the same USGS which is out there saying maybe Kilauea could restart. You know, we don't want to say that it's really over, although certainly the people down in the Big Island are hoping it is really over. Now they just have to deal again with Hurricane Lane. And what a rough time they've had. What a rough time the people in Kauai had with the flooding. So one end on fire, the other end flooded, and now the middle is about to get blown away. So welcome to paradise. Apparently, a group of U.S. senators has expressed concern to the U.S. Army over revelations that lead paint in on-base Army housing has had life-changing medical consequences for young children living there. Now, I thought lead-based paint had gone away for that very reason. But apparently, lead-based paint inside an officer's house at Fort Benning, Georgia, where one Colonel J. Cale Brown served as battalion commander, led to the metal poisoning of 10-month-old J.C. Brown, the young son of the colonel, and his wife, Darlena. And again, I thought lead-based paint had been banned because of that, because little kids would, eat it. So maybe that lead-based paint was inappropriately applied to a residential area, because I know there's lead-based paint is used as a protective because of the heavy metal. But you don't put it in homes here. Now, you've probably heard of Stratolaunch, which was established by billionaire Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen. It's built the world's largest aircraft, wingspan of 385 feet, and it is part of a system to drop launch spacecraft at the edge of space, as high as Stratolaunch can fly, and then they rocket up into orbit on a much smaller engine, much lower cost. And their first venture is space tourism, but apparently they're already at work developing other platforms that can be launched into space using the system. And I think they've got the right idea. I think this is going to be a less costly way of getting into space for commercial purposes. All right, there's the music. Time for me to take a break here. We're going to be back with hour number 3 of our show and with Layla in Ontario. So we'll be back after these few words.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at libertystickers.com. Again, that's libertystickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network because you can handle the truth. What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero? The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 3. And joining us on the phone is Layla from Ontario, who's been a frequent caller into the show recently, has impressed a lot of our listeners with her command of history and geopolitics, especially in the Middle East. And so a listener suggested, give her the third hour, which is exactly what we're going to do. And Layla, let's start off basically with a little bit of your history, including your time with the corporate media.
You want to start with when we left Palestine or start from more recent events and work backward?
Well,
which would you prefer?
Well, this is your hour. I was thinking you might go all the way back, to basically where you were born and where you grew up. And, you can make it concise or whatever.
Okay. Right. I think I'd like to start with the very concept of Bethlehem itself, since that's been so central to my identification, to my very essence, to my being. And I first started doing my research. For some reason, I'm the only one who used to listen to my father when he would talk about Zionism. And I remember the Syrians and Lebanese, we were the only Palestinians. The Syrians and Lebanese would ridicule him for talking about the Zionists. And recently I got a phone call from someone who was the daughter of one of the families who did that and saying, oh, gee, Esau was right. Israel is just horrible what they're doing, blah, 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 blah. And it took all my willpower not to jump down the phone and say, do you realize how you people made us children feel miserable while you ridiculed our father? I don't want to hear this, but I politely said, yeah, thanks, goodbye. Yes, my father felt very betrayed because a lot of his friends were Jews, and I think he recognized, whether he acknowledged it even to himself, that our ancestry was actually Jewish. Take his name, Isa. Now, rabbis today like to say that the name of Jesse is Ishai, but if you look at the children of Jesse, all of those with the last name of with the last letters, the suffix of I-E, were always pronounced. And the J did not exist then. My contention is that when you have a famous person in your community, you tend to name your children after them. That I believe the name of Jesse is actually Isa. And even though Muslims like to say that was the Arabic name for Christ, it was not it. It existed long before Arabic came to the region. But anyway, my father was friends with, and my mother were friends with both Jews living in Palestine and a lot of the Ashkenazim. My father was given an export-import license from the British Mandate, which allowed him to bring things in. So he would bring in gifts for his Jewish friends. I remember he brought in a Persian lamb coat for the wife of one of their friends, and everything was great until they knew the partition was going to occur. And so in 1947, just before it was actually going to be voted on in the United Nations, my parents and their Jewish friends left, and we ended up at Ellis Island. When we arrived, ironically, everywhere we went, even though my parents spoke English and wore Western clothing, they didn't call us Arabs, they called us dirty Jews. And this is one of the reasons, if Mateus happens to be listening, that I have hard feelings about Canadians. And it's ironic that he referred to me as being racist when I condemned Canada, because first of all, Canada is not a race. It's the first country in the world to have started multiculturalism that seemed to have caught on. But wherever we went, we were called dirty Jews and fleas, or DPs. And because of the cost we ended up living in a small town called Colchester, near Windsor, where it was so bad none of the kids were allowed to talk to us. And I remember once being ganged up by teenage boys on bicycles, and the front tire was bigger than me, and they knocked me down with their front tire. And I just lay there crying, and my sister said, "Oh, get up, get up." And I refused, and my father came and picked me up and carried me home. And that continued for many years until we moved to Montreal, where it was a more cosmopolitan, sophisticated city, and they were more tolerant. Also, Anglo-Jews and Jews in general were far more influential in Montreal. And as I grew up, ironically, Jews were always befriending me because they thought I was a Jew. Now, maybe I was. Perhaps I didn't even, perhaps there's something about recognizing one's own that one doesn't recognize, because I do think, although I have been critical of Ashkenazim and their claim to being the sole beneficiaries of the land of what they call the Holy Land, there are some who have some legitimate origin, but I think that percentage of their genetics is very small.
Mm-hmm.
And many of them probably originate more from the Iranian area, and they would have moved northward into the Khazari region and then moved into Eastern and Central Europe. That would be my guess. And a lot of the research that I've done bears it out. Now, when we lived in Montreal, excuse me, I used to talk a lot with the older people, the ones who were in their 70s and 80s, who were still mentally competent and had remarkably sharp minds. And I'd ask them what they were told by their oldest ancestor, who still had cognitive abilities that could tell them about what it was like. And what they talked about was the fact that Arabs and Jews were basically nomadic tribes. They were throughout the Arabian Peninsula, and that Aravim referred to what we might call gypsies in the Arabian desert. And there were those who followed Hud, which practiced Judaism, and then there were those who followed Saleh, one of many Islamic prophets. And but still, they would fight with one another, and yet when it came to doing business, great friends. They would cheat one another quite amicably because that was part of the game. And then they would have their rivalries and kill one another whenever the opportunity arose. So that was the history that I was told of, and also the fact that Mesopotamia used to be known as Bet Nahrain, Nahr being a river, and Bet or Ben Nahrain being between two rivers. And of course,
Yes.
This is where the Greeks got their Mesopotamia. So there was, despite all the hostilities, it's like a brotherhood. You fight with your brother one day, but you love him the next day, and then you both fight with one another against your cousin, and then you become jealous of one another, and you fight with one another. So there's also a Middle Eastern culture that was absolutely fascinating. I know when I moved out of home in order to have my independence, because my father always believed, he would say things like, children are not ours, they don't belong to us, they are a gift from God, it's our duty to protect them. And so he would try to restrict my freedom. Well, he's right. As I look back, that's how I look upon my son. The other thing they used to ridicule my father for is when he would try to restrict us from having boyfriends and falling into what he thought would be promiscuity. He would say, "My daughters are the jewels in my crown." And for that reason, in order to preserve our purity, he wanted to go to Mexico, Monterrey, where there was a very large community of Telahme, the people of Bethlehem. And I believe the name Telahme originates with the original name Tel El Lehem. It's an anachronism. Everyone takes today's Arabic or Hebrew, and of course modern Hebrew is an absolute fabrication, which has a lot of, especially the Resh, the H sound that comes out from the German or the French. I mean, the ra, it was always trilled, as in the Latin or the Greek, and certainly in the Arabic. But anyway, so we went to Bethlehem, where the idea was to marry the daughters off while they were still pure, because my father believed that was his duty, to deliver his daughters pure to their husbands.
Yes.
And and
I hate to interrupt. We've actually
Go
got
ahead,
a
do you have
caller
any
on the line who wants to ask you a question, if you're okay with that.
Sure.
Okay, Harry
Absolutely.
in Indiana, welcome to the show, and you have a comment or question for Layla.
Yeah, I'd like to know how Jews give themselves the name Ashkenazi when Ashkenaz was the lineage of Japheth, not Shem.
Actually, Ashkenaz meant from Germany, according to the Hebrew. And Shem, Al-Sham, for example, Syria was always called
So you're
Al-Sham.
claiming that Germans were of Ashkenaz, is that correct?
Well, that
They were
was
like
the
brothers.
way they would
They're
often
related,
refer
huh?
to the Jews of Europe as being primarily around the area of Ashkenaz.
So it has nothing to do with a racial, Ashkenaz was a human being, but yet you're claiming that Europe, a geographical location, equals a lineage of Ashkenaz. Is that correct?
No, it's not a lineage, but it was a cultural style, because they had adopted a lot of, for example, Yiddish. I assume you know what you sound like. You're probably Jewish, and I assume you know what Yiddish sounds like.
Yeah, I know what Yiddish is. It is a bastardized form of Hebrew and German.
Well, it's not that. Well, not really a bastardized form. It's from the very old German. For example, when the European Jews came to Palestine, they would speak with a ha, 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 very heavy ha. In Arabic, the ha is very soft. There are three ranges for that ha sound. There's the soft hat, as in hat. Then you've got the ha, which is similar to the Germanic ha, as in Bach. Or you've got, then there's the one that everyone has trouble pronouncing, and that's the intermediate ha. And if you don't learn that very early, anybody can pronounce it if they're taught properly, but if you learn it earlier, it's much easier.
I'm not content with that answer at all.
Well, what is it that you're not content with?
Well, you're telling me that Ashkenaz is Europe. Ashkenaz was a person who was the lineage of Japheth, not Shem. The sons of Noah.
You know what? I'm not going to talk about the Bible. I'm not a rabbi. I'm not a priest. I'm not
you're claiming to be, Jews are claiming to be the lineage of Shem, and then Europe is supposedly, your opinion,
we are
the lineage of Japheth.
Well, no, we are the people
correct?
of Judah. We are the people of Judah. I have many people in my family whose first name or family name is Judah, even though our tribes were not necessarily labeled Judah. There were numerous tribes.
What happened when the Maccabees mixed in with the Idumeans? Are you familiar with them?
I know who the Maccabees were, and they were fighting, I believe, the Hasmonean.
Okay, Harry, I'm going to ask you to please be civil and, let Layla talk. When you've asked a question, please let her answer.
Yeah, I haven't focused too strongly on the Maccabeans because I believe they were fighting the Hellenes with good reason, because a lot of the people of Judah were very modest and they covered their bodies, and they were horrified when the Hellenes came. And not only did the men walk around naked, they would, forgive me for being so graphic, but the only part that was ashamed to be exposed was the glands of the male appendage. And they would pull the foreskin and tie it. You will see this in a lot of the Olympic portrayals. Well, I guess you pull the foreskin carefully.
My eyes are tearing up just imagining that.
During the time of Herod You know, the Levitical priesthood was no longer in operation, and why the Pharisees were in operation at that time. How can you people claim to be Levites when the Jews killed off the Levites?
May I tell you what I know about Herod? Herod was an Idumean, and the Idumeans were the remainder of the Nabateans that moved into Edom.
And Caiaphas was an Idumean who he appointed.
Okay, Harry.
The Pharisees were generally Idumeans. Now, did the Jews have a foreign, were their high priests foreigners?
You know what? Those are the kinds of questions that weren't part of. I wasn't there, and I really don't know. And
you're telling me,
Harry, we're going to let you go because one thing that we do demand on this show is civility and politeness.
I think you ought to work on.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so getting on back to Layla here. I mean, I don't know what his agenda was, but he basically came off as wanting to attack you and discredit you. And when it comes to religion and history, everybody's got an opinion, and nobody really knows what was going on all the way back then as well. So where we left off, your father had taken you and your sister down to this community in, I guess it was Mexico, where there were a lot of... Say again?
Monterrey in Nuevo Leon, just across from Laredo.
Uh-huh.
From Laredo, Texas. A lot of them, and ironically, I hear that a lot of Jews, Judeans, often went to Mexico, and that it was they who first brought. I don't know if it's a play. It sounds similar to a swear word that used to exist in Mexico, but cabrito was a meal made from goat. And it was wonderful, but they say that it was the Jews who came to Mexico that brought the goats and made it one of the primary parts of the Mexican cuisine at the time that we were there.
Okay.
Now, one of the nice things that I do remember is in Monterrey. I mean, it was a beautiful city at the time. It was long before it became industrialized, and there was a huge and very wealthy, unfairly wealthy Telhamic community, and basically marriages were always arranged between people. And to be honest, there was an arrangement for me to get married to a very wealthy family who lived in Leon, Guanajuato, which was a very wealthy town in the province of Guanajuato, which had great historic significance. And they were from Bethlehem, but had been in Mexico for a couple of generations. We had thought initially when they invited us to visit them in Mexico, they were interested in my sister, who was older than me. But when we walked across the street, they were very wealthy families. They had huge mansions across the street from each other in the same colonia. And as we were walking across the street, I asked Mother, "So what is it? Do they want Diane?" And she said, "No, they want you." And I said, "What did you tell them?" "Well, we told them you're too young." And their answer was, "Well, does she menstruate?"
Oh.
And they answered, "Yes."
Okay.
Well, then the answer was, "Well, then she's old enough to get married."
All right. Well, listen,
and for me, it was a great adventure.
Let's crank the clock forward a little bit here because we are, we only have the rest of the hour. I understand that you worked in the corporate media.
Yes. Okay. Well, what I wanted to point out is this is the culture that also existed amongst the ancient Judeans. As soon as a girl was capable of being fertile, she was ready for marriage, and the families arranged it.
Well, given the short lifespans back then, it would almost make sense that as soon as they're able to reproduce, they should get married and start reproducing, because especially in an agrarian society, children represent a major resource. Large families were good. You had a lot of kids to do the errands and the chores around the farm and everything. And it wasn't until the modern industrialized age that the idea of limiting population size really began to take hold. So anyway, let's actually we're coming up on a commercial break here for just It's going to be 3 minutes long. When we come on back, I'd like to move the clock forward and hear about your time in the corporate media. So we're going to take a break for some words from our sponsors.
All right.
Extendivite is more than just a heart tonic. Most basic diseases are caused by yeast in the gut and metals in the liver, and we all have a bit of both. The garlic in Extendivite has a yeast-killing effect in the gut while also helping the sulfur enzyme in the liver get rid of the metals. Extendivite just may improve your overall health. Products like Extendivite are the only way we are going to get our society healthy. And if you're waiting for the government and pharmaceutical care to solve your health problems, you're going to have a long, disappointing wait, I think. Extendivite is a complete formula for extended life in the new millennium. 80 can be the new 60. Extendivite is available in capsule or liquid form for just $69.95 for a 2-month supply. To get started, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking with Layla from Ontario, who's a frequent caller to the show, a very impressive command of history and culture. And before we go on to your corporate career, we have another caller on the line who hopefully will be a little bit more polite and respectful than the last one. Dustin in New Jersey, aloha. Welcome back to the show. And what question do you have for Layla?
Mike, hi, Justin. Hi, how are you? Mike, you and Layla, I learned more from you than my entire life in school. Both of you. I mean, it's incredible.
You're fun to listen to. You're great.
Well, Layla, I live in New Jersey, and I live in, Jackson, which is next door to Lake. What's your take on the Hasidics? And they go to Israel, but they don't believe Israel, should be there. Is that right? I mean,
I think those are the... Go ahead, Layla.
I think the problem is once a country exists, it would be such a horrendous upheaval to try and dismantle it. It's unrealistic and cruel to everybody involved, to both sides, including the Arabs, whether or not they realize it. We have to move forward while we acknowledge the past. We have to move forward. There is a kinship there. There is a culture that is similar. There has been exploitation of, like, the big brother of the little brother, the wealthy part of the family and the less wealthy part. And there's a lot to be given, because a lot of the Palestinians that have been trained in IT and in computer technology are actually being employed by the Israelis, although the Israelis claim it is they take the credit for it. But nonetheless, there already is interaction. If you read how, you will see that Gideon Levy has always been an advocate of peace. Amira Haas has even gone farther and lives amongst them. There was a man named Uri Avneri who has gone around the world. He was and spoken about the rights of the Palestinians. There is room for cooperation. They may never be, it'll take generations before the bitterness is forgotten. But that's human history. It's always been like that. Even here in Canada, there was always the ongoing hostility between the French and the English. And that's why multiculturalism was made formal policy in Canada in 1971, because Pierre Trudeau introduced biculturalism, which created hostility. So then he went to multiculturalism, which only complicated the matter further. And then it spread to the U.S. I know I haven't really answered your question. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what can happen. I do know that I've always had Jewish friends and felt a great deal of affinity with them, a great deal of closeness. I can feel their pain. I also feel the pain of the Muslims, the Palestinians. It's very difficult, and that's why I try to dissociate myself from both sides now, because I used to be a very vociferous advocate for Palestinians until I realized it was far more complicated than even I realized. And I had been researching it for years with both living people and with credible sources of written history. And so I just hope for the best. And I hope and pray that there is a power that will help people find a peaceful resolution.
Leah, can I ask you what like for modern day? I want to know, like, we know what Mike's and my takes is on what's going on. What's your take on what's going on with Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia? You know, modern day of this economic.
Well, the Saudis, that doesn't surprise me. If anyone knows anything of the history of the nomadic tribes, they were always bitter rivals of one another. They would offer temporary hospitality, but would also kill one another. At the first opportunity, and steal whatever they had, because again, resources were very limited. So fighting was also a thing of honor. If you couldn't fight, then you were useless. It was a very manly thing to do. In fact, even in the Christian culture, which was heavily influenced by the Muslim culture, if the man could not control his wife and children, he wasn't a real man. So violence has always been part of the Middle Eastern culture, whether or not we want to admit it. And the idea of, sorry, go ahead.
No, because I see, you know, like with Saudi Arabia, I see a collaboration between them and Israel, like what's going on in Syria. So is it like my enemy and my enemy's my friend? I mean, because the British put both of them in, right? I mean, back in the day. So I mean, is there still that they're linked together?
Muslims have told me for years, Muslim scholars have said the Saudis never really converted to Islam. They are still Jews. And in fact, there was something in Haaretz not too long ago about finding old synagogues as well as old churches. Remember, Christianity was extremely common in the Arabian Peninsula. In fact, it is said that Muhammad himself was either Christian or Jewish, but the first wife that he had, Khadija, was a Christian. It was her uncle, the bishop, who married them, and she was much older.
Okay, I'm going to have to put this on hold here. We got to take another commercial break. We'll be back in 4 minutes here. So Layla, please stay on the line. And Dustin, thank you very much. We're going to let you go right now. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to ancientlifeoil.com. That's ancientlifeoil.com.
Do you worry a lot whether you're a college student, busy professional, parent, or grandparent? Ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in 1 to 2 weeks. Call 1-800-758-8746 or calmandclever.com.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you a few from Amazon.com. By Mel. Great product. My husband and father-in-law use it regularly. Both my husband and father-in-law have had significant change in their blood pressure and overall health. By Amazon customer. It works for me. Returned to buy the tincture and the capsules as they were on sale during February. Unlike some other products, this one worked for blood pressure and occasional irregular heartbeat. Extendivite produced noticeable results after just 2 bottles, a 4-month supply. I take Extendivite 3 times a day, every day. I think the supplement has helped with my increased fitness regime and to lower my blood pressure. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite. We the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're still on the line with Layla from Ontario. And Layla, for the rest of the hour, I'd like to talk about 2 things. First of all, I want to hear about your career in corporate media, what you were doing. I vaguely recall seeing your face on a TV guide cover. And then for the rest of the hour, I want to hear more about what you're thinking as to what's going on today, here and now. So, Layla, can we start with how did you get into corporate media?
Okay, I would never have gotten into a job as a reporter or an anchor if my husband had not been American. In Canada, when I said I wanted to be a reporter, people would laugh at me because they said that news coming out of a woman's mouth would sound like gossip. And when I did go to CTV offices in Toronto, because I was one of the few who recognized that Montreal would no longer be the economic capital of Canada, and I wanted to move to Toronto. So I went there, and I remember being in the office of one of the top executives, and he picked up the phone and called one of the executive producers of programming and said, well, I don't know if she's got new talent, but she's long on looks. I remember but it was okay then in those days. It's like you could pass a woman around like a piece of candy. The same thing happened to me when I worked in advertising. I had great hair, so they wanted me to do shampoo commercials. And my father said, where's your self-respect? And, of course, so I wouldn't do commercials. But anyway, he then referred me to the executive vice president, who ran off a whole bunch of airline tickets and said, come on over for dinner from Montreal. Here are some blank tickets. In those days, they would do that.
Yes.
And so then I thought, that's it. So I went to the University of Windsor because I knew there would be no distractions, no parties, no great restaurants, no great discos. And I did a 3-year degree in a year and a half. Of course, I already had some credits from my previous efforts. And that was where I met my husband. I also got a job at CKLW TV. I was writing the 11 o'clock newscast from 4 o'clock till midnight, and then I'd go to school during the day, doing poli-sci, communication studies, and economics. And I got, I think it was a 3.5 average while working. So when I met my husband, I tried to attract him. He wasn't interested. He said, I don't date students. A year later, after I came back from Israel, suddenly he had a huge interest in me. Only later did I find out why. But anyway, he and I almost broke up at one point because I was one of those Canadians who believed that we Canadians were morally and intellectually superior to the Yankee, the gringo that everyone hated around the world. And my husband and I got into an argument. He said, you Canadians are lacking the guts and the drive that we Americans have. You're lacking the American can-do attitude. It wasn't exactly those words, but that's what he implied. I was so angry, I took my skis and my equipment. I said, that's it, we're breaking up. Well, sure enough, we got back together, got married. He took a sabbatical. He was teaching in the School of Dramatic Art. So he took a sabbatical to Northern Michigan University because he was from the Upper Peninsula. He was born in little old Halbert, where they used to have to hunt for their food, population of 400 people. He was also a gun collector, and there was more to him than just that. But although he was of Ojibwa descent, he loved his country more than anything else. When our son was born, he didn't care what I named him. All he wanted was to have him registered as an American. So when we went to the U.S., my first job was with the PBS station as promotion director, and I knew nothing about PBS except what I knew about the ideals of public broadcasting. And they hired me, and the Jehovah's Witness, who was the general manager of WNMU, was PBS station licensed to Northern Michigan University. Mm-hmm. So he just threw me on the air. It was baptism by fire. And I remember one guy saying, you'll never again be as sincere on air as you are now. Although I would argue with him that my sincerity was always there, because when I read stuff, I knew what it meant. I wasn't just what I called a seeing eye mouth. The eye see what's on the teleprompter and the mouth utters it. And there was a very respected broadcaster, actually his name was Jack Webster, who told me personally, you're one of the only people that I've ever seen reading news whose eyes show that they actually understand the severity of what they're reading.
Well, that does help.
Well, yeah, having had the life experience, I knew something of, I didn't actually experience it, but I knew something similar to the things I was talking about. At the same time, I also befriended a Jewish guy who was a part of a peace movement, and he was part of Greenpeace. And his brother, he invited me to a secular Passover, a Pesach. And I remember his brother, who was a physician, all of a sudden just burst out into anger because he had worked at Physicians with Borders. He said, how can you sit here as a Palestinian when I've been there and I've seen all the Palestinians that have been butchered by Israeli weapons? I said, look, you're a Jew. I'm a Palestinian. What I do not want is to hate anybody. If I'm here with your brother and your guest, it's because I don't want to hate. I want to understand and share our shared the pain that we've both felt for those who have used us for their gain. And he just walked out, and everyone was embarrassed and apologetic. But anyway, that was when I was working for, oh God, I hate to say the name because it was the low point of my career. I was working for the CDC, and I had a great deal of hostility towards me because I had this American experience. And I found the CDC, the editors and the cameramen were top-notch. The people in the newsroom were lazy. They had no interest in actually digging up their own stories. They would get their stories out of yesterday's newspaper. They'd get a clipping, and this is your story for today. This was TV, which is supposed to be so immediate. And they had 5 people doing the job of one job that was done by the person who was actually on site. My favorite news director in the U.S. once told me, I'll send 5 people to the same story, and if I don't come back with 5 different versions, then 4 people did not do their job, because there's always a great deal of nuances to a story.
Yes.
But that was a remarkable man. Jack Hogan, everybody admired and respected the man. He actually gave the start to a lot of the people who made it to network. But anyway, when I was spinning my wheels. I left New Orleans for a variety of reasons. The climate didn't agree with me. I had so many allergies, and it was so hard being separated that far out. Before then, I'd always kept my jobs within 2 to 3 hours of driving from my husband and son.
Yes.
I would stay either in Lansing, Michigan, which I loved working, or Marquette, where my husband was from, or my husband was from near there, or I would work in Grand Rapids, which is where I met, which is where I worked for Jack Hogan, and he was an amazing guy. And my news directors in the U.S. were fantastic. And their assistant news directors were wonderful too. They taught me so much. Whereas when I worked briefly in Toronto, the producer of the newscast used to refer to the area where the reporters sat as the gerbil farm. And one day we were walking across the field to a bar, and he grabbed me and kissed me. So I went to the news director and I said, so-and-so is harassing me. He said, that's okay, don't worry. We'll go out tonight and talk about your future. We're going to make you a star. I don't know if you know who Matthew Perry is. His mother, Suzanne Perry, used to be an anchor there. She didn't last very long. So he said, we're going to make you a star. And after we came out from dinner and we were in his car, he made an obscene move on me. And I had met with him to complain about the producer. So he wouldn't accept my resignation, so I sent him a telegram and quit. And called my old boss in Grand Rapids, and I said, please help me get back to the U.S. So I went to work in Lansing, where I had a fantastic job. I anchored the noon news, and then I reported on the Capitol in the afternoons for the 6 o'clock news, and I loved it. And then, unfortunately, they had scouts that would record different people, and I got interview requests from places like Tampa and New Orleans, both of which appealed to me. And my sister lived in Florida, so I should have taken the Tampa job, but New Orleans really appealed to me. There was something about it. I moved there, and it was a great experience. I learned, in terms of news, I learned a great deal. But I was doing 2 news shows a day, the 6 o'clock and the 10 o'clock. I was also expected to do spot news, write for both newscasts. I was also expected to do series for the ratings periods. And then when my brother was murdered in Jamaica in January 86, and I asked for permission to join my parents to go look for my brother's body in Jamaica, my co-anchor, who was harassing me, said, hey, babe, the only death certificate that gets you time off during the sweeps is your own. And when I complained to my bosses about him sexually harassing me, My bosses dragged us up to their office and they said, both of you have got to get along. The ratings depend upon your chemistry. G, I'll just call him G. You leave Layla alone. G came up and said, well, she's come on to me. And they said, oh, shut up, George.
I guess they knew about George. Listen, I want to bring this part of the interview to an end. It's all very fascinating, and I can see, I mean, I saw a lot of this for myself when I worked in entertainment, but I want to jump forward now to what's going on today, certainly between Israel and Palestine, certainly with what's going on with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Turkey. And so let's start with Israel and Palestine. It looks to me like Israel, especially after reading this article about how concerned they are about Palestinian population growth, I think Israel is considering, if not simply shoving everybody out, all the Palestinians out, of finding some way to limit their population. And that's a very ugly thing. Go ahead.
Paranoid Palestinians have been saying for a long time, for decades, that the Israelis are putting birth control in the water wells of the Arabs. That, of course, is probably not true, since they've continued to reproduce so prolifically. There was also rumors that they had put the typhus bacteria in the Palestinian water wells done by the Mizrahi Jews. That, too, I doubt. There's a lot of paranoia on both sides, fear of the two. What do I think is going to happen? I don't know. I honestly think that there are a lot of Jews and Palestinians who have married one another.
Yes.
There are a lot of them now who actually empathize with one another. And so I have always said, we all know what history is. Rarely has there been a conquering power that has not completely crushed the enemy when they were at the weakest. Israel did not do that. So while I hate to give a great deal, any praise to the IDF, and I think it's ironic they call themselves the Israeli Defense Forces when they're actually the aggressor, but nonetheless, they could have been far more violent than they have been. They have now got Netanyahu, and that's the problem. I think had Rabin lived, things would be different. Even Yitzhak Shamir would have been more willing to compromise. Certainly we know Menachem Begin was. So all of that means that there is an extreme radical element within Israel that will not compromise, and they have a lot of political power right now. Yes. However, there are also the old Matrei Karta. There are a lot of Jews who believe that the Palestinians should have rights, and I do think they will eventually speak up when they realize that it's a matter of their own lives being impacted even more severely than they are now. I do have a small amount of optimism, but I'm terrified that once things go out of control, you just can't. It's like a snowball going down a hill. You can't stop it. And I'm afraid this is where I'm so disappointed with Trump. I had hope that he might be able to bring some common sense to the whole dispute, but I don't think he's going to. He's just totally. Now there is one other way of looking at his making Jerusalem the capital. That has been a sticking point from the very beginning of the creation of Israel and the United Nations and their very first mediator, Count Folk Bernadotte, who wanted to make both Bethlehem and Jerusalem international zones for the world because of their significance.
Yes.
He was murdered by, I think it was the Irgun under the orders of, I think it was Yitzhak Shamir, not Menachem Begin. So he was murdered just before he was going to present his plan. So the Jerusalem issue has been there from day one. What Trump may have been thinking is if he removes that by force as a negotiating issue, eventually the Palestinians who have always been forced to swallow what they didn't want to swallow might actually begin to accept it. And if the Israelis show a willingness to share Jerusalem, even if they do have it as their declared capital, then eventually over time, with the intermingling, and let's face it, human beings being what they are, there's going to be interbreeding. Over time, there may become some kind of resolution. I do know that when I did not live at home in Montreal, and it was a disgrace, I was always told I must come home whenever there was an Arab visitors. The only time I enjoyed coming home was when there were Mizrahi Jews coming to visit because it was so much fun. And there was that commonality amongst the Mizrahis, and that's where I think the hope lies. With the Jews that have lived amongst the Arabs long enough that they already see that they are basically one people with this political wall standing between them.
Well, it really does
I don't know.
Yeah, it really does come down to its politics, because we've seen times in history where the Arabs and the Jews got along just fine. You know, everybody live and let live. In fact, when Europe was persecuting the Jews, many of them fled to the Middle East, and the Arabs took them on in. Anyway, Layla, we got to take one more commercial break here. We'll be back with the last segment of today's program after these few words.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds, up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield Tactical Bipods. AROutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AROutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
Do you or a loved one suffer migraine headaches? Listen to what scientist Kurt Hendricks has to say.
35 million people in the United States suffer with debilitating migraines. If you or a loved one are one of them, you need to know about MigraLief. Hi, I'm Kurt Hendricks, the scientist that formulated and patented the MigraLief migraine formula. MigraLief is a non-prescription dietary supplement recommended by neurologists, pharmacists, and pediatricians to address nutritional deficiencies in both adults and children over 2 with migraines. Try MigraLief for 3 months and see the powerful difference it can make in your life, or get your money back, no questions asked. Go to MIG911.com or call 800-MIG-7354. You can change your life today.
So if you suffer from migraines, don't wait. Call 800-MIG-7354. That's 800-MIG-7354, or visit MIG911.com.
When all this twisted steel was swept away. Did these remaining holes reveal what's really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today here. And we're finishing up with Layla from Ontario, who has this encyclopedic knowledge of ancient religion and events in the Middle East here. And we're finishing up the show talking about, is there the possibility of hope that somehow Israel and Palestine will learn to live with each other? And I'm not as optimistic as you are, certainly because the nation-state law passed by Israel makes it very clear that Israel does not want to share any part of the country with the Palestinians, let alone Jerusalem itself. And this is a very hardline approach. They think it's, ordained by God. And, everybody has to come to the table and make peace. And one of the things I am disappointed in Donald Trump about is this so-called great deal that Jared Kushner took on over to the Palestinians, which basically said, now that Israel and the United States have cut off all your money and you're all starving to death, we'll send the food and money back on in as long as you give up your right of return. And the Palestinians...
That is unacceptable. Yeah, that's
certainly it was
the very idea of Jared, who has absolutely no qualifications other than the fact that he's a friend of Benjamin Netanyahu and the husband of Donald Trump's daughter. That is an outrage that he would even be appointed to that position. In fact, it's even an outrage that Ivanka is there because she wasn't elected. She isn't qualified either to deal with issues like that. So that is what makes me pessimistic. Without those people being there and without Netanyahu being there, I think there would have been hope. I will tell you this, that despite the fact that I spent most of my life believing myself to be a Palestinian and even a vociferous defender of Palestinian rights, today, if I had to choose, you can live with either Israelis or you can live with Palestinians, I would look for moderate Israelis and I would choose them over the Palestinians, only because they are more similar to the culture in which I was raised. Even though I know a lot about the Middle Eastern culture, I am still very much a westernized woman, and I would be very comfortable living amongst Israelis. Now, if I feel that way, I suspect there are a lot of women who feel that way who I do know that when I was there in 1986, when I was sent by the TV station in New Orleans to do a series, one of my mother's cousins said, we have to admit that life has been improved a great deal for us since the Israelis have come over. Look at the quality of vegetables and fruits that we have now, and the quantity. We never had this before. So there are people amongst them who, and it's not just the Christians, I think. I believe there are a lot of Muslims who feel the same way. Because I know Muslims and Israelis collaborate on a lot of research projects, especially on health issues, where both people have genetic conditions.
Layla, I got to cut you off. I'm sorry, we're at the end of the show.
Okay.
There's the music here.
Enjoyed the show.
Okay, please stay tuned for John Stadmiller, and I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. He's going to have a guest who's going to be talking about what's going on down in South Africa. Please take what you learn here and at the whatreallyhappened.com website, share it with everybody. Keep talking up this affront to the First Amendment we're seeing in social media. So have yourselves a good evening. I got to go check on the hurricane, and we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.